Hi, and welcome to this quick interview with Sarah Reimann for our upcoming Business Toolbox seminar. Sarah is from Adelaide, and we're so excited that she's going to come all the way to the Central Coast in New South Wales and spend a couple of days with us, 2 days actually, a Friday, Saturday in Gosford for our Business Toolbox seminar. It's a great honor, Sarah, to have you coming up, and we've done a little bit of a journey together. I did go onto your website earlier on, and I love it says that you're a strategic business advisor, you're a virtual CFO, you're a speaker and an MC, and so that means you're busy. I know you are all those things, but I wonder if you'd just take a minute and introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about what you do and who you are.
Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate the intro. And yes, I've attended a number of Dave's seminars last year, and I can tell you they are brilliant, well organised and excellent. So yes, I am an expert advisor to professional service organisations mainly. So I help CEOs and owners build businesses that are profitable, that they're scalable. I call it saleable as well, because you can build a business that is an asset that you can sell. So I help them not be a slave. They create a business that can be run 100%, so it's not 100% reliant on them. And I do that through strategic planning, strategic business and financial plans for them. I get the whole team involved and help them implement those actions by being accountable. And in my past life, I was a tax accountant. So I say to people I'm a recovering accountant. I'm still recovering from that 15 years in tax. But again, but in all seriousness, it gave me a good base being an accountant, because it gave me that solid understanding of numbers and finance and how businesses run. And when you're sort of a general tax accountant, you get to see a lot of different industries. So I've worked with manufacturers, tradies, hospitality, and then of course all the services like NDIS and accountants and lawyers and all of that stuff. And you see a big range, which gives you a big overview, and it probably helped me to work out who I didn't want to work with more than who I did want to work with for the last few years.
You've been running some. I noticed you've been running some interesting events down. You live in Adelaide. Some business events down there. Just tell us a little bit about some of those. What are you doing there with those business events?
Yeah, so in the last few years, I've been part of a number of other business networking type events where I was sort of an MC or part of their team. And then I middle of the year, I got a bit unsettled, and I'd sort of going to the Lord, what are you doing here? And I quit all of that, and I thought, well, I'm just going to do my own. And the name came to me, Empowering Success Events. So I've kind of branded it as that. And what they are in a nutshell is they're networking events. So everyone in Adelaide especially, it might be a little bit like the Central Coast Day. We're like a small community, and there's a small business community here, and they love to network, and they know that in person is great. And I thought, well, let's just put on some lunch and learns or a dinner event where I get in an expert. Normally it's me as well. So I host it, I present, get someone else who's an expert in an area that I'm not. So for instance, a mindset coach or a leadership development coach, or someone that's good at sales or things like that. And I just invite my local network along. And what that creates is, number one, it's a bit of a marketing thing, obviously, for my services, but it also helps it's a collaborative thing. So it's about equipping and training those business people, not just with a nice lunch or putting a whole lot of people in the room with the food and drinks and saying, hey, go for it, but giving them some practical training that they can then take away and
love that.
Their business.
Love that. Yeah, I think it's great. One of the things that we do with this particular seminar, the Business Toolbox, so we do 3 of these a year. Each one is different, but this one, the Business Toolbox, we lean into finances. We lean into, from both a practical space, business finances, investments, cash flow, all that sort of stuff. And then we also, of course, come from the, kingdom wealth, supernatural prosperity, some of the biblical principles as well. And so I think this is going to be a great mix between very practical, know your numbers, that sort of thing. And then also, how does that fit in the big kingdom conversation? How does that fit with regards to generosity, sowing and reaping, all of those things? So I'm excited for us to be working together. One of the questions I thought would be great to ask, I mean, you work with different size companies and across different industries. What would be for you, just thinking in this SME space, the small, medium enterprise space, what would be a couple of just common, maybe misconceptions that you find when you're talking to a business owner that they have around numbers and around knowing their numbers? What would be a couple of things you just go, I see this all the time? What would that be?
Yeah, so I thought about this question, Dave. I actually wrote a few things down, and it's more about what people have said to me over the years. So I'll just read those out and then I'll talk to it. But these are the things that people have said to me. Okay, I'm not a numbers person. I'm not an accountant, so I'm never going to be good at finances. I don't know where all my money goes every year. The one that everyone loves, I am paying too much taxes, too much in tax, right? And there's a misconception about the difference between cash flow and profit.
Okay.
That's a fairly big one. So those sort of 4 or 5 things is what I've heard. But what I say to the people, well, I'm not a numbers person or you've got to be an accountant, is if you're in business or if you're in any sort of business where, you're serious about your business, it's something that gives you your income and your lifestyle, you're going to be in it for a while, a few decades or whatever, then you kind of you need to be a bit of a numbers person. And that doesn't mean you have to go and have a degree, but you've got to be a numbers person in terms of just having that basic understanding of what's a P&L and where's the money going. Otherwise, to be honest, you're not really going to have a profitable business if you're not across the numbers to some degree.
Yeah, so you're just guessing, right? You're guessing. You think it's working, but how do you know? I come across the same thing when I, and it's funny. The thing that's interesting is whether people run whatever you would think is a small business. I've found CEOs and business owners that actually run very large companies, like lots of income, lots of turnover, that still don't know the basic numbers that they should know. Some of them, they inherited the business from their father or their mother or whatever it is, and it's kind of always been run a certain way, and they're a little bit lost in the woods, but really disempowered. So knowing your numbers, I mean, all those things that you just said, I've heard them a million times, and so I will pick up. Of course, I know that some of the training you're going to bring in this seminar is going to be really practical, going to help with some of those things. Absolutely.
Dave, on the cash flow and profit thing too, that sounds like a bit of an accounting term, but it's really important that people understand that, because it's the questions they ask that lead to that. So if people say to me, I've got no cash in the bank, but then I go to them, well, hang on, you've made like a $400,000 profit. And they, oh, no, but it can't be because I don't have the cash in the bank. That's a really important key of understanding the difference between cash flow and profit, because you could be making profits, but be really limited on cash. And generally, it's not always just this, it's generally debtors and people not getting paid on time. That's the issue there too. That's another big one.
Yes, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about the type of businesses that you with some of your services and all the rest. What are some of the businesses that you've helped in the past? What would be some of the industries and maybe some of the sizes? Is it all big end of town, or do you have you worked with different size companies?
Yeah, look, it's all SME space. So I think the biggest one I've worked with has got probably, there's 2 NDIS places I worked with that were around 15 to 20 million. Sure. But that's turnover. It doesn't mean their bottom line. Those industries, the margins are quite tight. Yeah. But most of the businesses I work with are kind of in, the 1 million to 10 million space. I have, when I was an accountant, I worked with a lot of tradies that were only, in the half million, but I tend not to do that anymore. And so I've even worked with lawyers and accountants, in terms of business planning, getting systems and processes right. NDIS, I've worked with probably 3 or 4 of them. They can be good, but a lot of the owners they've got a passion to help people or help the disabled or help the elderly, but their business and financial acumen's limited. So they can be good to work with as long as they've got that kind of growth mindset. And again, I've worked with cafes and manufacturing and tradies, but some of this stuff is limited in terms of how far you can go with some of that stuff because their overheads are really, really high.
Yeah.
And most of those people don't want to grow too much. They're happy with.
I found personally, that a lot of the entrepreneur training or business training that people do, if they do any training before they jump into a business or whilst they're in a business, revolves around marketing, around product strategy, all that. And almost like this finance thing gets relegated to make sure you get a good accountant, make sure you get a good accountant. But I found, I've been in business for almost 40 years now. I found that how many times have I, heard from my accountant after everything's been processed, and it's almost like a post-mortem thing. You should have done this, this, and that. And I'm thinking, oh man, if I would have known that, or if I would have had some sight for that. So it was always sort of reactionary rather than, intentional. So like the question I wrote here was, what would, if someone says, okay, I want to do the finance thing better in my business, or I need to get the business money sorted. What would be, the first step or the second step that you would just say to them, well, this is where you'd begin? Because I find like I'm busy in the business, I'm overwhelmed. Oh man, it just seems like another thing. I know it's important, but where would I start? What would be one practical thing? Now we're going to go deeper at the end of February. We're going to go deeper, but just as maybe a headline, what would you say would be one of the most important things to start? Where would I start?
I'll just talk to that thing you said about the accountant, because that comes into misconceptions, and then I'll answer that one you asked about where they start.
Right.
And I've heard this too before, as they say to me, because I'm a virtual CFO too, right? So they go, all right. I've recently actually put out a guide as to what does accountant versus bookkeeper versus CFO, because there's a misconception around that. Why do I need a CFO if I've got an accountant? But they're different roles. And the thing that you're talking about, Dave, is I've almost got a post-mortem of my business, and it's historical. And that's where tax accountants fit. And it's not wrong, it's just different. And most tax accountants, and I can say this because I was one, are in their practice. They're busy. They work with SMEs. They're doing compliance. They're ticking a box for the ATO. They're lodging VAS's tax returns. They're doing all that compliance work. And to be honest, most of them don't have time or maybe even the inclination or skill set to get in with a business owner and talk about forward planning, forward thinking, forward cash flow. And that's why a lot of people get frustrated. They go, oh, my accountant's not proactive. But to be honest, it's actually not their job to be. And that's why I'm going to remind them, hey, you need a CFO, because they're a strategic finance person, whereas a tax accountant is a compliance person. So
nice. It's a good distinction.
Where would they start? Because it could be a minefield, and it's just like marketing too. Maybe, I don't know if I'm talking out of school here, Dave, but for people like you, marketing maybe doesn't come naturally.
No,
and it's
it
not
doesn't.
Something. It's hard work. And for people that aren't finance people, it's going to be hard work too.
Right.
But the first thing you've got to do is you've got to probably engage someone that knows what they're doing too. If you don't know where to start, if you sat in front of an Excel spreadsheet and you're like, wow, where do I even start? Then get someone to help. And then the next step is getting onto a budget. So creating some sort of budget or a cash flow forecast. And then that helps them to see the bigger picture in their business, because sometimes they can just go, this is another thing I've heard people say, I look at my bank account and my invoices for the month, and they're the only 2 figures that I ever look at in my business. And that, as we know, is not great for gauging, how our business is going. So we need to get that. And also just looking at some simple financial reports every month. So just getting out of your Xero or your Maya, a simple P&L just for the month, and spending 5 or 10 minutes. Because if you're a business owner, you should understand this is top line revenue, these are expenses, that's my net. And it doesn't have to be any more complicated. And if you see things that aren't right in there, then you can start asking
Yeah.
questions.
Love it.
But
Love it.
and if you don't understand that, get someone in, but you should be at least looking at a P&L and debtors as well, because debtors is another thing that I'm really really grinds my gears. Like I look at people and they go, the average payment of this person's this client was 600 and something days, you know, and then they wonder why they've got a cash flow problem. So yeah, so that's where they should start, is just looking at some simple financial reports and having some sort of budget, and so they know where they're to put their money and stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I mean, I'm already excited about even just some of the points that we touched there. I know the sessions are going to be really practical. So Business Toolbox on the Central Coast. It's going to be on the 23rd, 24th, Friday, Saturday of February. We're going to have a great time. I'm really looking forward, Sarah, to having you with us. And I know the sessions are going to be full of information, and we also, because it's a training forum, lots of Q&A. So really, you know, we can dig in a little deeper as well. We do have limited seating capacity. We sell out very often. So I would just encourage you, if you haven't registered already, click on the links that we're going to place below, and get yourself registered, get yourself sorted. Great time to be on the Central Coast in February. The beach is close by, great restaurants, and we're going to have a great time. Sarah, I'm so looking forward to having you with us, and we'll see you end of Feb.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Great.